Hey everybody, how you doing? And welcome. This has been a really fascinating day to say the least. I got a call from an Oakland official who told me right off the bat, "Hey, you know what? Called to inform you that the Raiders have contacted us and told us that they were going to stay in use the Alameda County practice facility located in Alameda City for 36 months, but they were not going to exercise their 2020 lease." Okay. So that was the announcement that I was giving. So thank you very much, City of Oakland, for allowing me to break that story ahead of everybody. And so I thought, let's check and see how the stadium is progressing. Let me show you something. First of all, when you go to the Las Vegas Raiders website, I'm going to use my phone to show you. This is the Raiders website, right? And it says right there, right? If you read that, it says, reads Allegiant Stadium. Let me enlarge that. Allegiant Stadium live cam, right? That's what it reads. Allegiant Stadium live cam. Now watch what happens when I press on that. There's no live cam. Normally the live cam comes up. There is no live cam. So either they've taken that page away deliberately. Let's be clear. That was just done. That was just done. It was done in such a way, a sloppy way, because look, if you go back, right, it reads what? It says live cam, okay? Now, there is another button that says watch the progress view now. Maybe it's just somebody made a page mistake, right? Maybe let's give them a benefit of that. Maybe it's not a censorship thing. Let's press on view now and see what happens. So we press on view now. No, not at all. Same result. So it means it's one bar that's a button rather than two buttons. Someone doesn't want you to see the cam. They don't want you going down there and analyzing what's happening, okay? So I think what's going on is, look, there's obviously something going on that they don't want you to see. There's obviously something going on that is negative. Now, this opens up speculation as to what's happening. There was one gigantic happening or occurrence that some of you may not be aware of. Welcome to Zenny 62. And that is very simply that Caesars Entertainment is now faced with a situation where they have lost how do I put it? They have lost now estimated, 14,000 room nights because of the coronavirus. That's right. This is according to Vital Vegas, okay? And he wrote approximately 7 hours ago, this one hurts. Estimated 14,000 room nights for Caesars Entertainment per source. Sorry, but these overreactions are not commensurate to the threat. Don't people realize that liquor kills germs? Using alcohol with the sanitizer, right? What this reads is from Atmosphere 20. Transforming ATM 20 Las Vegas into ATM Digital. This reads, the health and safety of our team members, customers, partners, and our communities is our top priority and responsibility as a company as we continue to monitor the potential impacts of COVID-19 coronavirus. Out of an abundance of caution, we have made the decision to deliver our favorite event of the year, Atmosphere 2020, via video, streaming, and small local events rather than an in-person event in Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment is a Las Vegas stadium sponsor, a major one. That's 14,000 room nights. That translates to, let's do a quick estimate of what that might be when you let's just factor in what the common room night might cost. Let's just peg it at maybe 100 and 170, $180, right? $180 average, right? 180 times 14,000 room nights, right? 14,000 room nights times 180 per night equals, that's $2,520,000 in revenue lost, like that. Boom. Okay. Boom. $2,520,000 in lost revenue. It's a lot of money. That is a huge chunk of change to lose. 14,000 room nights lost. That revenue is, if I were to take, let's see, those room nights times 0.088 would be, that's $221,000 in lost revenue to the bond issue. Okay. Now, overall, given the bond issue pulls in about $4 million, I'm averaging about $4 million a month lately. That in and of itself, it's a hit, but not a big one. But still, if it was $1 million, if you keep losing events like this and they stack up for a month, I could see a scenario where the Strip loses, where Clark County loses maybe 50% of its standard hotel room nights, okay, because of the coronavirus. All right. Andrew Rivera says the Raiders can make that back in a weekend. Andrew, we're talking about a situation where it's the coronavirus. So it's not, I mean, we don't know, because this is still the infancy of this whole problem, how much worse this is going to get. Here's one big freaking clue right here. This is real. This is not made up. Las Vegas just lost or stands to lose $2.5 million in hotel room revenue, estimated $180 per night, from an event that decided to go from in-person to digital. This is not, I don't know where you guys are getting this stuff from. I don't know if you're aware of current events. I know there's some people around the country, including here in Georgia, that want to think that the whole coronavirus issue really isn't all that real, but it is. We have a virus that people tell me is man-made, you know, and they say, hey, you know what? Boom. So the real story here is that you have a camera that isn't working for some reason. You've got a gigantic event that was just, for all practical purposes, killed because of the coronavirus, all right? Iran temporarily released 54,000 inmates to avoid spread in its prisons of the coronavirus. That's in Iran alone, okay? You have, and then you have, for some particular reason, Allegiant Stadium. And Allegiant, I type this, Allegiant Stadium comes up like that, right? So something happened. Allegiant Stadium. Someone was touring the construction site. And the Raiders have some good news. They brought in their 11th founding partner sponsor called Rocket, which will have the ability to use team marks and player imagery in company marketing efforts. That's great news for the Raiders. So they are one founding partner sponsor away from achieving their objective. So that's good news for the Raiders. Congratulations. So then you've got, let's see here. They're installing stadium lighting as well. I wonder if something happened during that installation which caused them to turn that off. Because the camera is off for a reason. Okay? The camera is off for a reason. Whatever reason that is, it is off. And it can't be, let's see here. Las Vegas Stadium. Let's see here. We've got, yeah. Let's see here. View from Black Hole. View from Black Hole. Raiders, don't let the "We are the Las Vegas Raiders" woman in the stadium ever, please. I don't want her in as a fan. I guess they're talking about Jedi Rich and Jedi Joy, who created that song, right? Oh, well. Boy, if that's the level of crazy they think is going to get, oh, well. Hold on, okay? Some things to ponder here, like how fast a tax will be raised for new. Okay, no, that's not happening. Las Vegas Rights. Rocket. And nope. Okay. So difficult to tell, but as to what's going on, well, clearly something happened. So Andrew says Zika, bird flu, and all the others that pop up so consistently and conveniently around election time, shaking my head, what a time to be alive. You live every day but die only once. Now, true words have never been spoken. A wise comment. A very wise comment, Andrew. I completely agree. It's now the real question that you all should be asking, rather than just sitting, is why did the Raiders make the decision right now to pull the plug on the Coliseum in a very un-Raider-like way? They did so, which I think is quite interestingly cool. They did so well before the deadline. Usually, like they would push. These are the new Raiders, okay? They push. The old Raiders would push the city of Oakland toward the deadline, the very day of the deadline, and then they make them wait until 5 o'clock, right? These are the new Raiders. The new Raiders say, I think we've got enough money to do this. Economically, it doesn't make any sense for us to try and work a dual stadium deal this year. And plus, the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda really don't want us to, because they're not budging on the deal. So our best move is to go out, right? I think if they had enough money, they would have chosen to try to split the difference. So you know what? We'll lock ourselves in now, which is what I thought they were going to do, just in case something doesn't work out where the stadium is ready in Vegas. But they haven't done that. They haven't done that. And I think the other part of the reason may very well have to do with the lawsuit. And knowing Mark as I think I do, and how he has a tendency to make judgments in a way that is not far from his emotions, I think he may have, perceived this as, hey, you know what? We're going to court. We're going to be in court with them for a long time. I don't want to give any more money to them at all. I'm going to take my chances. Now, is that the wise decision? No, it's not. As I've said before many times on this channel, hey, you know what? His father was in and out of court with the city of Oakland on a lot of for years and never stopped doing business with him ever. So Mark's take is entirely different. Is that term of cutting off your nose in spite of your face, right? I don't think it was a wise decision. It's not a matter of desirable or undesirable. Look, the city of Oakland. I've said this before. Some of you watching this, I would estimate maybe 50% of you haven't watched me before, or if you have, you watch parenthetically. But for the percentage of you that have been here all the time, you know that, I mean, like years, okay? You know that I went from the place where Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf had told me privately when I was in when I was in Phoenix for the Las Vegas decision, what became the Las Vegas decision. We didn't know what was going to happen. But I was confident that the NFL was going to vote to keep the Raiders in Oakland for one reason, because Libby gave me the impression that she was going to march in there with an 11th hour deal that did just that. What was bothersome is that she left me and a number of other people, including people of the NFL staff in New York, with the same perception. So when the deal did go down that morning, actually that night, Libby called me the previous night and said, I'm going to send you an email really early in the morning, but don't call me because I'm not going to be awake. All right. I thought, oh, that's going to be the email. Oh boy, right? Well, she sent an email, all right, but it wasn't the email that I expected or Roger expected, talking about NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell or anyone NFL staff. There are some people that I saw in Phoenix who work for the league who are that close to crying. See, a lot of you thought this is just an Oakland issue. No. The vast majority of you have no idea how well Oakland fan base has been regarded by the National Football League. You have no idea. So, and that love created a lot of hard feelings in New York and created kind of divisions for a small bit of time. But everybody was able to sort of coalesce and be not very happy with one person, and that was Libby. Because at the end of the day, what they wanted was they wanted Mayor Schaaf to give the land to the Raiders. And I was under the impression a long time ago she understood the logic of that. Why? Because you can't. I'm rolling my eyes because, I'm going to go with the idea that you all are smart enough to understand tax increment financing, not right off the bat, but at least look it up and figure out what I'm about to tell you, okay? You cannot, as a government, own your land and yet use tax increment financing. The idea is for a private entity to own the land and then pay you a property tax, which then goes into the tax increment financing formula, which is kind of a doubling formula, okay? It is a very powerful tool for the creation of revenues to finance bond issues for very expensive projects. In this instance, a stadium. Well, I told Libby way back in 2015, I said, Libby, she goes, we can't give them the land, it's ours. I said, Libby, if you don't let go of the land to them, you don't get a chance to have tax increment financing used as a tool. Let the Raiders own 50% of the stadium, right? Build an LLC with them, and then just the ownership legally just so so that tax increment financing can be generated from the stadium and from Coliseum City around it, and you would come away with 400 to $500 million additional monies, actually more than that now. As I think about it with respect to the properties, additional monies to use. Now, here's the catch with all what I'm telling you. That technique is actually being used at Howard Terminal for the A's ballpark. So those of you thinking that Oakland doesn't have any money, I've said this before and I'll say this again. You need to throw that out of your mind. Oakland is sitting on a ton of money. I mean, look, how the heck can we have the most expensive properties, some of the most expensive properties in the world in Oakland, and not have the basis for tax increment revenue? All right? So there's a lot you all don't understand. And you toss around these ideas that are so far from reality, it's not funny. It's not funny. And you have perceptions that are so far from reality that's not funny. For example, there was a guy early on that talked to the bond counsel and to the what's called the public finance manager or advisor, finance advisor for Clark County on the bond issue for the stadium. That guy happened to have a spreadsheet that was helpful to the financial advisor because he hadn't been through the whole stadium process before. That person that was involved in assisting him behind the scenes at no cost was me. So for those of you who think, you put these little stupid things out on Twitter like, Zinni's against the project, you have no idea how much I've helped and tried to help the Raiders and Clark County and their financial advisor over that period of time. So you have zero idea what you're talking about. So you would say, why? Simple. I wanted to see the Raiders have a great stadium. They deserve it. As poorly as the Raiders treated the city of Oakland, and look, I'm not coming away from saying that, there's enough wrong on both sides, okay? It is one of those both sides things. The bottom line is the Raiders deserve a stadium. They need to get on with it. And between the Raiders waiting on the city and the city getting tied up in this really old idea, and this is really the problem, folks. This is what happens when you let politicians run economic development, okay? Which you should not do. A politician is a good cheerleader. When you have politicians literally engineering it, all right, and there's no point person like there used to be, you got a huge problem. And what happened was that the idea was, and this idea that's advanced by a media that's basically stuck on stupid. The idea that, you have to have a lot of money and you have to have deep pockets to be able to finance it. And then someone will say, well, what about Stan Kroenke? Stan Kroenke is not using his own money. His own money is a backstop in case these private bonds he's got out there don't pay off. Okay? It's a backstop in the same way that Clark County is a backstop in case those bonds don't pay off. But see, Mr. Kroenke's revenue stream is not just from the stadium itself. It's from all the other operations he owns. So he can afford to take that and pour it into his $10 billion facility. Yeah, I did say that, $10 billion. For those of you also who are under the impression that Las Vegas Stadium is the most expensive one ever built, no, please, throw that out of your mind. It's SoFi. Buy a ton. Okay? Buy a ton. So the whole point was that Mayor Schaaf was supposed to allow the Raiders to do what Mark Davis said he wanted in the Oakland context. And here is where the Raiders get into trouble. In part of it, he says that he wants to own the stadium. Mark does. Then he says he wants 8,000 parking spaces right at the stadium. This is all documented. But then he doesn't get that in Las Vegas. So when you add up all of the requests that Davis made, when you put out there the fact that Davis had said to me personally, with Mike Silver of the NFL Network as my witness, and he put that on Twitter, hey, I want you to come up with a plan. So I not only come up with a plan, I get one of the best investment banking firms in the world to be involved and to bless it, and that was Piper Jaffray Investment Bankers with Diane Poway as managing director out of Minnesota. All right. So I don't know if Mark really got that I could actually do something and had no intention of acting on it when I called to follow up and say, I'm ready to meet with you and I've got Piper Jaffray, and I sent him a spreadsheet, or maybe he didn't think I could do it all. It was a joke. Whichever case, it wasn't a joke to me. Or maybe he thought I was going to ask for money. That wasn't my intent. I was simply honored that Mark Davis asked me to do it. That was all. Now, maybe I should have said, hey, pay me. But look, why should I ask somebody to pay me for something that they don't know I can do? That doesn't make any sense. Okay? The whole point is to get this stadium thing off the ground, was to have something done that could be done in Oakland. All right? But when I built it, when I came up with the technique of using net operating income from the hotel to finance essentially as another source of financing for the hotel itself. Because Davis at the time said he had a $400 million gap. I remember when I first talked to him in earnest, this was at the 2014 spring NFL meeting in Atlanta. And he came out with Mark Bedane, and I was going to meet him. Bedane, grabbed me like this, and I said, "Mark, why you grab me like that? We're brothers." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." So Mr. Davis says, "I need 400 million. You got 400 million?" And that's what put in my head, that was the mark for me. So in 2015, after I had worked with Mayor Schaaf to really put it to Davis and say, hey, look, are you working behind the mayor's back? And he basically admitted that he didn't say I'm working behind Libby's back, but in so many words, that's the way it turned out. This is all on video. Right here, Zenny62 YouTube, okay? So, and chances are you've seen it before if you're watching it this late at night because you're trying to catch up and maybe take some notes, whatever. Or you just want to be entertained. I don't know. Whole point is enjoy. My point is that that when Libby, that was March 19th of 2015. And come on, Zenny. May 19th of 2015, spring league meeting. Because Libby didn't want to believe the Raiders working behind her back to establish a stadium in Carson. And what I told her and what I told the city was, hey, look, this whole idea of that February 20th, 2015 rollout of the stadium design that you now see as Allegiant Stadium was originally supposed to be Carson Stadium, just didn't have a hood over it, right? That whole idea that I was going to just be a placeholder in case neither the Chargers or the Raiders could work out deals in their home cities, it was not a placeholder. They intended to build that from the start. It was a trick. The whole doggone thing was a trick. You would say, why? What started all this? Well, I'll tell you. 3 words. The Los Angeles Clippers. That's right. One man, Steve Ballmer. When Steve Ballmer purchased the Los Angeles Clippers for $2 billion in 2012, the sports business world went apeshit, including the NFL. Why? Because the NFL had no franchise in LA, and all of a sudden, here comes Steve Ballmer by the action of his purchase of the Clippers for that much money in Los Angeles, demonstrating to the sports business world, hey, LA still has value. The NFL had tried to return to LA as far back as when I was working on the Super Bowl. And you would say, what do I mean? I mean the bid to bring the 2005 Super Bowl in Jacksonville, because Jacksonville won, to Oakland. When I first got involved, that was early in 1999. And at that point in time, Michael Ovitz, who was arguably still the most famous Hollywood agent ever, was trying to build and get financing for something called the Hacienda, which actually is a really, really neat concept. I wonder if I could still find that online. Let me see. You got to see the concept for the Hacienda, folks. Hold on a second. This is worth, a little bit of a segue here. The Hacienda Ovitz NFL Stadium. Let's see if I can come up with what that thing was supposed to look like. You know what? The Hacienda. I found it. Take a look. This was to be the Hacienda. See that? Let me see if that lines up properly for you. I'll move this down here. Yeah, there it is. See how that's called the Hacienda. A stadium. That was Ovitz's concept. See this? Look, a 2-decade NFL time. That was Michael Ovitz's concept. That was the idea, the Hacienda. Okay. All right. And so Ovitz had his design, and Lee Steinberg, all right, that was to be in Carson. And then Lee Steinberg and another group was part of another group that was working on a downtown stadium. Thank you. A downtown stadium. Okay. And so in that downtown stadium, and I remember asking Lee on his show why he favored the downtown stadium for LA. And he said that he felt that the urban activity should be, the focal point, having it in the city rather than the suburb. But what happened was that the downtown proposal had but one thing going for it and nothing else. Farmers Insurance came forward, thanks to Tim Laiwike, okay? And hey, Joseph Amanduras, Zenny62 blogger, how you doing? Tim Laiwike, who became one of the most famed sports executives ever, and head of Anschutz Entertainment Group, AEG, you probably know it, managed to work a deal where Farmers Insurance pledged a $700 million naming rights deal. But the stadium was never built, so they never had to cough up any money. But the name recognition of being attached to an NFL stadium project in LA was so great that Farmers Insurance just lived off the notoriety, literally. Meanwhile, so the Hacienda project, which is to be in Carson, didn't get off the ground because it needed, and was based on the idea it was going to get an NFL stadium. Michael Ovitz was bidding for what would have been the 32nd franchise to be an expansion franchise in Los Angeles. But what happened? This was in 1999. Excuse me, not 99. This was just 1997. What happened? 97 going to 98, just before I got involved, and then flipped. What happened was this. Michael Ovitz was outbid by a man by the name of Bob McNair. Bob McNair had sold his cogeneration plants for $1.4 billion. Yes, the same Bob McNair that you probably know, who passed away very recently, a friend of mine, of skin cancer. That same Bob McNair. He outbid Michael Ovitz to the tune of $750 million that McNair was able to present versus $550 million from Michael Ovitz. Commissioner Tagliabue tried to, for want of a better term, eke out more money from Ovitz, but he couldn't. And the whole matter ended, sadly, for Mr. Ovitz in a crying session with the commissioner in Los Angeles. He was upset. And that, and I'm foreshortening things, is how the first version of what would have been an LA franchise, an expansion, one ended. Houston won the right to have the 32nd franchise. So, but what happened? Okay, so Houston gets the 32nd franchise, and guess what? LA is still without a team. So we go into the early aughts, as we call it, right? 2000 to 2010, no NFL team in Los Angeles. Then all of a sudden, in the second decade of the 21st century, here comes former Microsoft chairman Steve Ballmer, lover of basketball, willing to throw down $2 billion of his own money to purchase the Clippers. And so he did. And Mark Cuban almost had a baby. True story. True story. So I remember when I first heard about it, I wanted to be the person that worked for the NFL to engineer an NFL team coming into Los Angeles. I went so far as to approach Joe Brown, who was then the executive vice president of government affairs for the NFL. And I said, Joe, and this is where I saw him. I saw him at NFL Honors. I was given a ticket to attend NFL Honors by a friend of mine, Chrissy Delisle, who actually produced the Culinary Kickoff Classic that I was at in Miami. Videos here at Zenny62 on YouTube. At any rate, she says, hey, you going to be around tonight? I said, yes. Yeah. Here, come to the NFL Honors. So I did. Not as press, just, one of the folks in the audience. So I just met the fellow from Breaking Bad, Aaron. So I was having a conversation with him. He was a fun guy. And oh boy, it's been a long week. Breaking Bad. Aaron, what is his name? Aaron Paul. And we were talking about Breaking Bad and NFL honors and football, that sort of thing. Aaron Paul. And just as I finished my conversation with him and I was going back to my seat, I saw Joe Brown. I said, Joe, I'll bet you guys are working on, and because actually I read it in Sports Business Journal, I think, that they're going to work on getting a franchise in LA. I said, I want to represent the league in that because I believe I have the best political connections to make that work smoothly. And he said, I agree with you. I'll work on it. So, look, I wasn't hired. They ended up going with Eric Grubman. So if Eric ever sees this, Eric, there's the real backstory, pal, okay, for why I may have questioned what you were doing, or not may have, did question what you're doing at this point and that point. You know what I'm talking about. Because I believed I could do it better than Grubman. And I believed I could do it without the political rancor that sometimes Eric brought to the table. Just being honest. I felt I could do it better than Eric. Because Eric had a rough edge that he brought to it that I felt could get the league in trouble if it wasn't handled appropriately. There, I said it. So, meanwhile, 2013 comes up. We're messing around the city of Oakland with, I think it was first the Prince of Dubai under Oakland Mayor Gene Kwan, but the Prince of Dubai was never involved. And here's where I'm talking about with politicians thinking that, you've got to have a lot of money yourself to be able to lay on a stadium. Nobody spends a chunk of money on a stadium. You design it so that the developments, you have all these different developments. Like, you've been to a shopping center, right? Okay. Shopping center does what? It has all these different tenants that pay rents. Okay. Part of those rents go to the operating cost of the facility. The other part of what? Profit, right? So expand that concept. Let's say that you own a bunch of properties around the world. Okay. So fine. You're taking that part, all those rents, and that part left over, and you're pouring it into your new facility. Okay. You're not spending your own chunk of money. You're spending the revenue that comes from the facilities that you own and run around the world. So you're not supposed to go to some wealthy Middle Eastern guy. But that was the city of Oakland's idea. They were fooled and bamboozled into that. Because here was the overarching problem. And it was a just one. They didn't want to use public money. They want to get public money involved. Why? Because of what happened with the first Raider deal. And what happened was that then Oakland's assistant city manager, Ezra Rapport, led a finance team that constructed the use of the first personal seat license, for which Mark Gannis or Sports Corp must be credited for creating the personal seat license over Max Mollman. It's a little battle that look, sometimes Mark treats me in a way where he comes off as a jerk. And I told him that once. I was talking with him. I said, man, how come you act like that with me? And here I am. I've advocated for you as being the first creator of the personal seat license. And in turn, you treat me like a jerk. And he goes, oh, I didn't. That's what it was you. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, come on, dude. Really? If I had $1 for the number of people that I helped in various aspects of business here, well, I'm going to complete that sentence. So, but the truth of the matter is he did. Mark Gannis created the personal seat license concept for financing. Period. End of story. And he did so for St. Louis and for the Raiders. So what happened was, the idea was, hey, you all are supposed to buy up these PSLs. That $220 million would go into the stadium reconstruction of the Coliseum, and everybody would be happy, right? One problem. We were supposed to sell 83% of the personal seat license available. Instead, we only sold 56%. And that revenue gap created a shortfall that, were it not for the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda using their respective general funds to pay for the bond issue at $10 million apiece each year, would have defaulted. Now, I'm telling you, if that had been done in Harris County, Texas, where Houston is, they have a law that says, hey, you know what? Counties cannot bail you out. They would have left the bond underwriters and insurers with the task of having to restructure the bond. And that actually happened with respect to where the Texans play right now. They said, you know what? This thing's going to default. You're going to have to take care of it. So there's a fair argument to say we should have done the same thing in California, but we didn't. Instead, the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda ate that. And they're still eating it. Okay? So that episode, called what then Oakland council member and still good friend of mine to this day, who is the city manager of Irvine, John Russo, created what was called the third rail of politics: public money for sports. You're going to get shocked. So that set up the climate. That set up the climate for why we had these crazy quilt financings or financing proposals for Raiders Stadium that understandably, look, made Mark Davis impatient. I get that. I get that. Okay. And what made matters worse was that when it looked like Jim Kwan wasn't going to win re-election, the one person who was talented enough, who really was the glue, the intellectual glue that held the city administrator's office together, the one person that was really well expected by the Raiders left. That was Fred Blackwell, who is still to this day the CEO of the San Francisco Foundation. You want to meet him? You can meet him if you watch my videos, interviews of him on Zinni62. Just type Zinni62 YouTube on YouTube. Type Zinni62 Fred Blackwell. You'll see them all there. Quite a few of them. So Fred was presided over everything from the Warriors to the Raiders to Coliseum City. Gone. And replaced arguably by no one who had that comparable level of involvement. And then when Libby became mayor, and I'm just telling the truth here, okay? I mean, this is not what I'm about to say. I'll just say it, okay? Libby brought in somebody that had to be brought up to speed, who had never done the kind of economic development projects that Blackwell was doing. That was Claudia Capio. And that's not being personal against Claudia, but Claudio's background was in housing. I tried to get Libby to hire Kofi Bonner, my good friend from grad school at Cal, who established the financing for and built the new Cleveland Browns Stadium. Did you hear what I said? That's right. Carmen Policy, when he was president of the Niners, hired Kofi to be his chief administrative officer. How do I know? Because I happened to be having dinner with Kofi after he called me to tell me, hey, look, I want to talk to you. I need your advice about a job offer. I said, by who? He said, Carmen Policy called me and asked me to be the president of the Cleveland Browns. That was 1998. He and I had met at what was called Harrington South Side, which is really a cool place back, as I say, back in the day, right? By a really interesting guy, Harry Denton, who's a friend of mine, who you can also meet here at Zinni62 on YouTube. You type Zinni62 Harry Denton, and you can hear Harry talking because Harry was quite a character. Harry was one of those, I call him Mr. San Francisco types, okay? So, anyway, you ever heard that term like when they throw away the mold, right? That's Harry Denton, okay? At any rate, I wanted Libby to hire Kofi. She did talk to Kofi, but never came out of it. I thought that was really too bad for Oakland. I thought Libby should have swam over to San Francisco to hire him because he had experience in doing it. I thought she should have brought in Robert Bobb, who was Oakland's chief administrative officer, who was my boss, who brought the Expos from Montreal to become, that's right, the Washington Nationals. And now he's got a World Series championship that he celebrated, okay? Two people I know Libby didn't want to involve. And in Robert Bobb's case, her reasons were like, Libby, are you kidding me? I'm not even going to go into that. Ugh, excuse me. Ugh. Wow. Lots of history. Somebody out there likes to write screenplays for a movie. Call me, because I got the greatest movie. I've got the greatest sports business movie not made yet of my that basically comprised with what I've experienced and who's been involved. Fun stuff. Now, all that conspired to Mark Davis' understandable impatience. The NFL's edict that it wanted its local teams, local home markets to generate $25 million in revenue. That was the minimum. So suddenly you've got, looking around, who's generating that, who's not, where do moves need to be made, right? And so originally, the idea was there was one scenario where the Raiders were going to join the Rams in LA. Then prior to that, it was supposed to be the Raiders and the Chargers in Carson, with the idea of meeting that revenue threshold. So in order to achieve that, and remember, this is after the whole Steve Ballmer purchase, right? So because look, owners are billionaires, and they're like, wait a minute, why don't we getting a return on our investment, a better one? And how can we expect to get one without being in LA? You have to understand that when you buy an NFL team, you're buying you really are buying a license to print money, because if you can afford it, because the growth rate in value of an NFL franchise has outpaced the S&P 500 for the last 40 years. Some crazy number like that. Jerry Jones bought the Dallas Cowboys for $140 million. Adjusted for inflation, the Cowboys would be under that. Be worth what, $220 million, right? But you know what they're actually worth? $5 billion. Think about it. He bought it for $140 million. The Cowboys now worth $5 billion. When I talk to Coach, so I sometimes call Jerry at the Las Vegas NFL meeting, where he sponsored meeting for the Raiders sponsors at CES last year, so 2019. I said, with gambling, don't you think that the Cowboys are worth about $10 billion? He goes, that's about right. Yeah, go from $5 billion to $10 billion. But the point I'm making is that a number of NFL people, a number of sports people have seen, including, and again, this was driven by David Stern before anybody else. He started talking about this before, gambling. And I still believe that gambling will save women's sports. I don't want to get off on that, but I'm just want to put that out there. Gambling on sports will save the women's game. It will actually make it better. But Andrew says, yeah, Cowboys with a steal. So what? Now, with respect to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys and that purchase in gambling, the interest in gambling comes because of a continued fragmentation in media, which threatens the NFL's ability to enjoy these gigantic rights fees that they've gotten from TV. So you have to understand the arc of history that you and I have experienced. Hey, John Akala, how you doing? And that arc of history went like this. It said, hey, we had ESPN in 84. And what ESPN and the advent of cable television did was it suddenly made that high school game that you went to every Friday night an entertainment thing. That, of all things, women's bodybuilding contest, yes, a thing. High school track meets state championship, thing. When I say a thing, I mean it's something that was must-see TV. All of these events, thanks to ESPN and its competitors, became must-see TV. Now, what does that mean? It means this. It means that companies were buying the right to have their logos and brands associated with those broadcasts. In other words, trying to get you to buy their product because you're watching that event. And that activity, the fact that TV was pointing at these events, created a rights fee market that didn't exist before. How much you're going to buy for a commercial for that women's bodybuilding contest? Hey, that goes to the bodybuilding contest. How much are you going to buy for a commercial for some home run derby associated with the World Series? Has he had even more money? You see what I'm getting at? All of these events had rights fees attached to them. And they just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. Who's at the top of the heap? The National Football League. Pro Bowl increases in value. NFL draft, look at what ESPN did it. Saw the rights fee and possibilities for the NFL draft, and boom, it expanded. Okay? Boom, it expanded. So all of this is threatened now because media is being stretched and stretched, and the ad dollars being stretched. There's only so much for the ad dollars to go around. The NFL sees this. It's projecting out into its future. And so the one activity that has been forbidden, but quite lucrative, people suddenly started looking at it differently, and that's gambling. And that is what caused Mark Davis to see the light, because two professors at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, brought to him a document. All of that thanks to Napoleon McCallum, the great Raiders running back who worked for Las Vegas Sands and said, hey, you know what? You're having a problem building a stadium? Come to Vegas. Okay? Bully for Napoleon. Now, they show where it was possible to eliminate all the gambling and all the other problems in this document, theoretically. But practically, Davis was hooked. Davis thought the NFL had rooked him and not giving him, Carson. I was there when it happened. I thought Mark looked like he was going to chew nails. Ouch. Had his backup plan in Vegas. Boom. Which in a sense was created for him because people saw, hey, this is on television. So Napoleon sees it, says, hey, you're having a problem? Come to Vegas, man. Boom. And the wheels were set in motion. But see, the problem was that Davis did all that, but he didn't tell the city of Oakland. Okay? He didn't tell the county of Alameda. Okay? Oakland District 7 Councilman Larry Reed told me that same year, 2016, that, and it's actually written on Zindy62.com, that they were going to take time. The Raiders are going to hire a stadium point person, a guy named Larry McNeil. No one knows what happened to Larry. They did hire him. Larry lasted for 1 year, and then, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? I have the emails he exchanged with Claudia Capio, but they led to nothing. It was like he was made to look like he was going to do something, but he was just there for show. It reminded me of the Star Trek episode, The Ultimate Computer, about where the M5 Multitronic unit, designed by Dr. Richard Daystrom, played expertly by the legendary actor William Marshall, realized that Kirk, Spock, and the Enterprise crew were trying to shut it down because it was behaving in a way that was wacky. So, in order to fool them, Kirk and his crew, it sent a relay to make the Enterprise crew think that it was doing one thing when it was consolidating its electronic grip and control on the Enterprise. That is what the Raiders did to Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, Oakland District 7 Councilman Larry Reed, and the Coliseum Joint Powers Authority. You hear what I'm saying? It's called lack of good faith dealing. So, Andrew says, remember San Antonio Raiders? I sure do. Hey, Eric Young, how you doing? So, Ronnie Lott was brought in, and a number of, I mean, I can talk for a long time, but I got to get to bed now. But the bottom line of what I'm saying is that where we are today, I was giving you a history of how we got to where we are, okay? And one fact remained through all that is the Raiders needed a stadium. And Mark was getting impatient. And what I wish Mark had done, and I think it could have saved court and everything else, is say, just be open. Say, you know what? I haven't focused on building a stadium in Oakland because the city and the county are not getting along. And they weren't. There's a lot of immature behavior going on that culminated in a post-Raider meeting action by Alameda County Supervisor Nate Miley, where he put out a press release basically saying, I can't work with these guys. We need to break up the JPA. Remember, that was in May of 2015. And that had been brewing for some time, going back to 2012 and the A's lease. But it didn't need to happen because the politicians should not have been in charge. It should have been public officials, the Flair Blackwell types. But you don't, and it's bad design to have politicians involved in all these negotiations when these are the same officials that have to worry about homeless problem, health care, economic development assistance, running the city, police department, fire department, right? All that. So you mean tell me you're going to be in this direction, that direction, that direction, that direction, that direction, and then still do sports right? It doesn't work like that. But that's what was going on. So Mark should have just said, you know what? I can't deal with that. So I'm giving you a clock. Las Vegas has an opportunity. I'm going to explore the opportunity. So between January 2016 and January 2017, if we don't have this punch list of activities completely done, I'm going to Vegas. That was what Mark should have done. Because it would have been open, it would have been honest, it would have been a horse race, it would have been a great economic development race to set up to see if the city of Oakland could clear it. Should have got the league to sanction it. And none of this would have happened. Because then the Raiders could truly say, hey, we gave them time. We gave them a fair competition and they didn't perform. Instead, everything that they did looked like it was set up to work against the city. The whole issue about the home team, the relocation bylaws, the town hall meeting, all that stuff. The way it was done, we were all looking at it and saying, hey, you know what? They're not handling this in a way that's honest. That's bad. Because there was a way there was no law saying they couldn't have done it the way that was honest. Okay? Eric Young says, dig, if you will, this picture from Prince. The Oakland Raiders of the XFL, a whole another Oakland Raiders team, same colors, logo, etc. Dig, if you will, this picture. They get sued. We gotta let go. The Raiders team colors and logo are owned by the Davis family. They have been. The only way to dream of getting them back is through a legal argument that shows that we were so thoroughly damaged, that the monetary rate is so high, that then name and colors become a possibility to acquire. And that's why I keep saying, hey, look, stop saying you want the name and colors, because that's a whole different lawsuit than what's on the table. The lawsuit on the table is not for name and colors. It is for antitrust violations and lack of good faith. Those are the primary, that's what the primary causes of action all add up to. But to sue for the name and colors right off the bat, boy, that's a legal loser. Period. End of story. Can't happen. Can't happen. Were we wrong? Of course we were wrong. Absolutely. No question about it. But if you want a court winner, you have to help structure the argument. You have to do the homework on the internet that then helps the attorneys. I keep saying that again and again and again and again, and it seems to go through one ear and out the other. Andrew says, could something like the Ravens-Browns happen? The only way to get there in this instance is you got to go to, you have to, let's see what happens this Friday, first of all. This is a red letter week. I would expect that Joseph Sparrow sees the error of his intellectual ways and understands that this needs to go on to trial. If he doesn't, I would hope that they refile and I would say get a brand new judge, file a complaint against the current one if his performance points to that. We'll see. We'll see. Fun. So I hope that gives you all a picture of where I really came from all this time. A lot of you, but you have to understand a lot of what I was pushing for in terms of an outcome was dictated by what I thought the mayor was going to do and what I was told the mayor was going to do and what I thought the mayor understood to do as far back as 2015 in terms of giving the NFL the land so that tax increment financing could be used as part of stadium financing. It just so happens to be what the league wanted. So then I thought Libby was going to fly in that Monday morning. Really, this is what I thought. Come in with this, hey, I'm here, to which they would have rolled out the red carpet for the mayor of Oakland. They would not have told the mayor of Oakland, you're not allowed. She presents her one-letter 11th hour deal, and the votes changed. Instead, no deal. It was just a rehash of what had already been proposed, and that pissed the league off something terrible. And yeah, it made a lot of people look bad. I have faith that Libby was going to do that all the way up until the 11th hour. Didn't happen. So, hey. Las Vegas, meanwhile, with its crackerjack economic development staff, headed by a number of cool people, and also headed by the great, truly great public official that is Stephen Hill, who I've admired for years. Got it done. Like I said, Steve might make his mistakes, but Steve is a smooth operator. He's the best of the business. And that's what happened. The city of Oakland went up against the best of the business. And watching him in action was virtuoso economic development performance. There are only a handful of people. Heather Surface, when she was with Jacksonville, heading their Super Bowl effort, was another one. Okay. Eric Young says, so then I don't want to repeat that. All right. I think I've said as much so you can figure it out for yourself. The question isn't to me, and this is why I cheer on Las Vegas, because look, my background's in economic development. I'm not an activist per se. I am a person whose training was to cause government to help builders build. So by my training, I favor what Las Vegas did for the Raiders and for its own citizens, and needed to do, because the way its economy is turning and how gambling is causing a lot of people to be laid off, unfortunately. Because now you can go gambling anywhere. Look at how Tennessee was developing. Oh, I got to check on Tennessee with the tornado issue. Wow. Okay. So Las Vegas needed to do something. And as a friend of mine told me, Las Vegas is very good at shedding its economic skin, making adjustments where it needs to make. And that's what we've seen Las Vegas do. This is a great example of that. So if you wonder where I'm coming from, it's one of admiration for Las Vegas and what they've done. And I've covered CES for 10 years in Las Vegas. So again, I say this again, I've been a long admirer of them. Okay. I didn't like, there's an old saying, you can love the player but hate the game. I love the player in Las Vegas. I simply hated this game. I think that's a fair way to put it. So there you go. All right. Whatever's happening with that live cam is interesting. I'm wondering if it's still shut down. Let's see here. Legion Stadium. So it says Legion Stadium live cam. Let's push that button. And wait a minute, it's back. The cam is back. Here we go. Because it was down. The cam is back, folks. Take a look. Ta-da! Because it was down. Here it is. It's back. All right. See that? There it is. Now, that was, today is March 4th, right? Today is Wednesday, March 4th, okay? So if we refresh this, why aren't we seeing the nighttime camera? There it is. Wait a minute. No, something happened here. Whoa, boy. Something was taken out. Something happened, okay? We know where this leads, all right? Right here. Okay. 6 a.m. 6:40. It's the crane. This crane has not moved. This crane hasn't moved since Saturday. All right. This crane has been stationary since Saturday. Okay. That crane has not moved since Saturday. You see that? You see the piping is coming in over there. Did you see that? Look at this. See that right there? Okay. So it's like, hey, put the piping in there. So they put the piping in. They're working on the piping. But this crane has not moved. This one is high in place with respect to the roof. All right. And 12:40, and then moves up again. And it's the only crane that's moving today. 1:40, 2 o'clock, 2:20, 2:40. This crane's going back and forth here. 3:20, 4 o'clock, 4:20. Crane is 4 o'clock. Now this crane is down again. Note this crane still hasn't moved. Oops, excuse me. 5 o'clock, 5:20, 5:40. And now we're getting that. Now it stopped at 6 o'clock. Normally it goes on later than that, but it stopped at 6 o'clock. That's interesting. Let me see something here. Interior view. Okay. Work on the light fixtures here. Let's work the panorama here. Ultra. Okay, there. This is wet. See how wet that is? They still got a long way to go, folks. This is a race against the clock. They are now under a great deal of pressure to make this happen. They don't have there's no fallback. Okay, there's no fallback at all. And now you have the problem of the coronavirus. So I'm going to root for him. Andre Rivera says Raiders will be in Vegas for 48 months and then back to Oakland. Jacksonville Jaguars moved to Vegas. Oh, man. John Acala says, do you know how much the cheapest single game ticket for Raiders home games might be? I don't yet. And I'm going to venture a guess the cheapest one might be 180, maybe 200, something like that. For, let's see what happens. I mean, for this year, they're going to be sky high. Let's see what happens. This is a work in progress. And you have to remember something. The coronavirus has really changed the game. We're not by any means out of the woods with this stuff. Okay. Hey, for those of you who thought I was going to not cover this thing, I don't know where you got that idea from. But I hope you now understand I have no intention of turning my gaze away from this project. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube. See ya. Oh, by the way, wait a minute. Andrew says it will not be done on time. It's already not done on time. That ship sailed a long time ago, man. So those people are like, well, it's going to be done on time. I'm like, you know what? You haven't been paying attention. I'll see you guys.